All right, guys, welcome back to the podcast. Let's get lit. Got Tanner Chidester in here, guys. If you don't know him, I'm sure you saw his ads, especially if you're in the fitness space. He still pops up on my Facebook every damn day. I've actually bought into his program, his coaching, and I will say he's very great at what he does. It helped me out a lot, structure my business from the beginning. I'd say you, Nico Moreno, and Alex Hormozy have been the biggest drivers in my personal business. So I'll go ahead and say thanks to you on air. You'll get a copy of this. You can use it for whatever you want.
Thanks,
But
man. I appreciate
I
that.
appreciate you, dude. So let's dive right into this.
Yeah.
So if you can, just kind of tell the audience who you are, like a summed up story, then I'll kind of go into some question asking.
Sure. Man, I feel like I've said this story 100 times now, but it never gets old, I guess. But yeah, family of 7 kids. So mom was stay-at-home mom, dad was a teacher. I grew up with no brothers, older brothers, I should say. I had 2 younger brothers and then 2 older sisters. So growing up, I guess you could say I was a little strange compared to society. Got bullied quite a bit. Tea parties, dress up was kind of my childhood. So I think my dad just, he didn't see any harm in it. But when I got older, I got made fun of quite a bit. And that was kind of a hard time for me because I didn't really understand why kids were mean for no reason. That's what I felt like. But around 12, I started working out so I could beat them up. And that's my
mindset was. Dude.
Yeah. So my mindset was, hey, I'm going to go to the gym so I kick these guys' ass. And because I was 12, I would go before school and then my mom would pick me up and drop me off. I just, I got pretty big pretty fast because I was going through puberty, newbie gains, all that stuff. And then people left me alone. And I really remember that being a profound moment in my life because I said, hey, I really worked hard. It was uncomfortable. I remember when I first went to the gym, it was a lot more painful than it is now because my body wasn't used to it. So I almost quit. But as I stuck with it, after about that 3-month mark, it started to be easier. And I just remember being so grateful I stuck with it. And then I started excelling at sports. So at first it was to get rid of the bullies, but then I started going on the football field and basketball court, and I was really excelling. I said, hey, I want to see how far I can take this. So from about 12 to 22, my entire life was sports, kind of like businesses now, but my entire life was sports. And then at 22, I was playing Division I football, got hurt a few times. I've had about 10 or 12 surgeries. Unfortunately, I just
Didn't you want to go to the NFL?
I did, man. That was my goal.
I'm about to say I knew quite a bit about you, and I like to do research on people before they come up on here, so I can ask you good questions. But you got a great story, man.
Yeah, I appreciate that. And I don't think I was good enough. I like to think I was, but I left knowing I did everything I could do. I had some scholarship offers out of high school. Some of those didn't work out. Then I went to BYU, didn't like it there. Went to a JUCO at Arizona Western for a year. Was trying to transfer to Texas A&M. A whole long story there, so I won't bore you with the details. But I did get to play with some some first-round draft picks. One was Ezekiel Ansah. Another one was Randy Gregory, who actually went to the second round for the Cowboys. They just lost yesterday. But he was supposed to be a top 10 pick. And he had some issues with like marijuana and stuff like that, which is why he went to the second round. But when I left, I was really lost. I was really depressed because that was my whole life. And so when you've given your life to something for 10 years, and I did all the 2-a-days, the extra workouts, anything I could do to try to get an edge. I had lunch with a guy named David Fry, and he actually, the award you see on the back of the screen, for those who aren't familiar, they're ClickFunnels awards. He's from that world, and he's married to Russell Brunson's cousin, one of his cousins. And I think he was just looking out for me. He's a really good guy. I consider him like my second father. And he was just looking out for me and said, hey, if you drop out of school, I'll show you everything I know about business. I was extremely terrified. I did it anyways. My family was super against it. My girlfriend was against it. Her mom was against it. I think part of that was the reason why she broke up with me. I think she didn't really think I had a future. And I don't really blame her. I didn't know if I had a future. But I stuck with it. And the first 2 years, I didn't make any money. $2,000 over 2 years. So, $100 a month, if that, not even. It's terrible. But I was learning all these skills, and I didn't realize it because I learned how to build websites, how to build email automations, how to run Facebook ads. I was doing door-to-door sales, and I was a server. So right around 25, I'm about 25 now. I feel like I'm getting old. And so I remember calling my parents, and I said, hey, I'm 25. I feel like a loser. I don't have a car. I live in this shitty apartment. Girls don't want to talk to me. I don't want to talk to me. It was a really hard time because I was so used to being the man. right? Being the big guy on campus. And I saw an ad on Facebook that said how to start your online fitness business. And I clicked on it, went through, got on a call, got high pressured into a $5,000 program. I didn't even know what high ticket sales were.
You do now.
Yeah, they were telling me, right? They were telling me, hey, if you don't do it today, you can't come in. I'm like, so I give everything I have on my credit card. My palms are sweaty. And I go get the rest. I had 2,000 in my bank account, 3,000 on a credit card. And I went in and I just said, hey, what do I do? And they said, so just, you're charging not enough. You're $47, raise it to $1,500 and just send DMs to people. And that's it. And I remember I go, that's what I paid $5,000 for. They're like, yeah, but it'll work. I said, okay. So first week I made 10 grand. And then a year later I did $1 million. And then I started having a lot of trainers start asking me for help. And I didn't want to go into that business at first because I actually didn't like coaches. I really hated coaches because I felt when I was getting help that a lot of them hadn't built other businesses before. And so I had this vendetta. I'm like, I'm not going to be a business coach. I hate these guys. Like a lot of them haven't really done very well, blah, blah,
Sounds
blah.
like college professors.
Yeah. And so, in hindsight, it's 50-50. I think I was a little harsh now that I'm on the other side of the coin. But I started having trainers ask me for help, did 10 million the next year. And then now it's called Elite CEOs, which is anyone who wants to scale online because I just kept having people ask for help. So a little bit of a long story. I can go into more detail, anything you want, but that's kind of my long story short. But I'm still grateful to this day because without that mentor or just sticking through, I look at how much money I've made now compared to what I would have made as an engineer. And it's,
So
49, $50 million difference. I mean, it's crazy to just think of how different my life would be.
So you've now done what, a cumulative 50 million since you?
Yeah, it's a little above that now, but I feel if you change it every other week, it sounds kind of cheesy. So I'm like, hey, that's a good benchmark. Once we get closer to like 75, I'll probably start saying 75. But yeah, around 50 million plus. So pretty crazy.
That's awesome, dude. Congratulations, first off. Not that you need to hear that from me, but
No,
two, that's a pretty cool relationship you have being that close to Russell Brunson.
Yeah.
That's
I mean,
really unique.
He's my mentor. Every time we would go to ClickFunnels, Russell would mention him on stage. He'd always say, "Is David Fry here? Is David Fry?" And so he's one of the OG marketers. He was, before the internet or barely the internet existed, he was one of those guys doing it. And so when we go some places, people know who he is. And he'll make jokes. He's like, yeah, I'm not really this popular. I'm only popular here. But yeah, it was a huge blessing. And I think without him, I definitely wouldn't be here for sure.
100%. I'll give you that same credence. I think people shit on coaches and it sucks to hear that. But
Yeah.
I remember my fiance left me December 15th of 2022 and I had no clue what I was doing. I was tired of selling insurance, giving away overrides and splitting commissions to people who violated my moral compass. And I remember I could not sleep. I was like, I'm broke. My girlfriend, my fiance left me for a good reason. Most people try to pass the blame. It was all my fault. So I like that you did the same. I come across one of your Facebook ads. It's like, learn how to do this, learn how to do that. It's like $400, 3 a.m. Like, you know what? Fuck it. I'm going to put this money in. Started going through your course, joined your ELA program. I was just investing in Alex Hormozy's Freed shit.
Yeah.
Which I love his content, dude.
Oh yeah.
I love his content, but it's like I saw you. I joined your ELA program a month after I bought some of those free courses and just started skill stacking. So it took you 2 years to make your first stuff online, but it was like I started off at 2,000. Yeah. Someone bought it. I doubled it and said, okay, well, if they pay 2, they'll pay 4. Doubled it again, went to 8. Then I doubled it again, went to 16, and that's pretty much been the price point ever since. But awesome, that all came from your shit, man.
I appreciate that. Well, and Alex, I'm good friends with Alex. I admire Alex a lot. And if you listen to Alex's story, it's way worse than mine. Because when I was going through mine, I thought that was as bad as it could get. But part of what was crazy about Alex is he was selling for these gyms, and then they were charging back. And so he would go sell more gyms, and they're charging back. And so he wasn't getting ahead. And so his story is actually insane. But I think it goes to show all the people who have high levels of success at some point, I think they just see the fork in the road and they push through it. And So anyways, I like Alex a lot too, and I think he says a lot of good stuff. He's pretty no fluff, and he's also a very good speaker. If you notice, one of the things I admire about him as well is he's just great speaker. And so part of
His
what I'm trying.
cadence, his
Go
cadence,
ahead.
his communication skills. That's why I love neurolinguistic programming. It
Yeah.
just teaches you how to enunciate properly, how to properly use body language and physiology, and really control the conversation. But you get so good at it that you make it think it was other people's idea.
Yeah, 100%. And I think when you listen to him, he's just very good at it. And when you listen to him 5 years before now, so even when he wasn't really doing social media, he was a great speaker. So I don't know how much of it you can learn versus how much is a gift. I think it's probably somewhere in the middle, like everything in life. There's a little bit of a gift, a little bit of a skill you can learn. He's a great speaker. And I think that's part of why he's done so well is because he obviously has a crazy work ethic, but he's a great speaker and he's a great communicator. So that's actually something I'm trying to work on when I'm doing podcasts and other things over time. I'm hopeful I get better, at communicating.
Dude, you'd love an NLP class. I know you can afford it, but it'd teach you everything you want to know about communication and how
Right.
to reframe and stuff like that. It'd probably be very valuable for the rest of your company as well, the
Yeah.
training in it. But
Yeah. I've heard some good things about that. I need to do it. And if I'm going to do it this year, as I've stepped out of the company, would be the best time to do it.
well, I'd highly recommend the Tad James Company. It's who Tony Robbins sends all his people to. It's who I learned from. They're by far the best
What's
at
it
what they
called? The
do.
company?
The Tad James Company.
Oh, James.
It
Like
saved my
TAD?
life. Yeah, TAD. I'll send it
TAD.
to you on Facebook.
Cool.
But dude, you'd benefit a lot from it. And I think a lot of Alex's tonality and stuff like that just comes from his conviction. Like I absolutely, and how he talks about the goal is not to be clever, but clear. I absolutely love that. So I had a couple questions I wanted to ask you. Like, is there a certain moment in your business where it all just kind of clicked? Because like I watched your testimonial inside of Nico's program, and it's like as soon as you figured out the mini chat stuff, it's like it blew up for you.
Yeah, Nico's a homie. He's a good guy. We're good friends to this day. Yeah, so that was the moment, and it wasn't necessarily many chat per se, but at the time that was the way you were able to do Facebook Messenger ads. So Facebook now has a native feature, so we'll just run ads straight there. But I don't know if you remember, about 5 years ago is when ManyChat came out. Facebook didn't really have that down. No. It was really kind of clunky, and I don't even think they had it. And so you had to use ManyChat or Mobile Monkey or these other platforms that essentially would activate a messenger ad. So the big difference for me is just I couldn't get my ads to work without it. So the typical way to run ads is obviously they click the ad, they go to some type of form and fill it in, and then book a call. And that just didn't work for me. Like I was getting a lot of resistance or people wouldn't come through, et cetera. And so as soon as I started running those messenger ads, I just had the idea. No one really told me, but I had this idea to go and message them because before I was just kind of crossing my fingers, hoping they would take the action I wanted. And I went back in after a really rough day. I was really upset and I made $18,000 that week off like $3,000 of ad spend, maybe less. And before I was barely breaking even. And when that happened, I remember, I was still living at my parents' house, ironically, but I remember going downstairs to my parents. I said, "Hey, I'm going to be a millionaire." I just like, I did it. Like I figured it out because at that point, once you figure out something that works, it's just how fast you can replicate it over and over again. And to this day, we still do that same type of thing. So it's pretty cool. And that definitely helped me. So Nico definitely is the one who sparked that. That's funny. You know him. Yeah.
Well, I'm in his program currently.
Awesome. Yeah.
But he speaks very highly of you, and I learned a lot from your program. But it's that, like you were talking about, that skill stacking. I know 100% I'll cross over a couple million in the next year again.
Awesome.
So, but it's like the funny thing you brought up with Alex is that those chargebacks. Like I just ran into the same thing twice in the last 6 months. I made a shit ton of money from running paid ads. My Stripe was just overloaded, ready to pay out. $1,500 chargeback comes in. Account's frozen for 180 days. It's like I just lost everything I've done.
That's tough. And something just for you and the listeners is, make sure when you're doing high ticket stuff, one, I like Wave better than Stripe. I don't know if you've heard of it, but
I switched. That's what I ended up switching over to.
Yeah, so we like
for my go high level.
Yeah, so we like Stripe for low ticket because it's really good for recurring and like set payments. It also is based on their dispute rate. So when you have more payments, you have a lower dispute rate, right? When you're doing high ticket, if you only have 100 payments, and you get 3 chargebacks, that's a 3% chargeback rate. And Stripe looks at that very negatively. So there's that side. The other side is just make sure something that really has helped us is over the years, make sure you have that signed agreement, but you get a picture of their license. We also will try to get pictures of the credit card, but what helps with that is, if they ever say, hey, this was fraudulent or I didn't authorize
That's what it was. Product not received. Like I have logins, timestamps, or IP.
Yeah, but Stripe's really,
Stripe's
really
they screwed me over.
Yeah. So when you get a picture of the credit card or not the credit card, but like the license, that's one of the biggest things, because in the past, I learned this through trial and error. I would have someone whose name was Frederick Smith, right? Just random. But then legally it was Fred, or they would say it was Fred, but it was legally Frederick. And so they would have me lose it because they said, oh, we don't know that this is the same person. I'm like, and it is the same person, trust me. But that's part of the game. You don't want to get those. But no matter how good your business is, everyone's going to deal with that. That's just part of business.
No, 100%. It just sucked because now it just happened again like a week ago from a girl who filed a dispute on an older account, on my old account that was already frozen. And I had a new Stripe. It shut down the new one, pulled out like 10 grand from my bank to cover for future chargebacks. So it's like I have 6 figures just sitting around frozen for 180 days, and I'm not even entitled to any of it.
I'm not laughing at you.
It's just part of it.
Because I've been through those types of things. So as you're saying it, I could just imagine like the emotions, like I actually can feel them. So it's funny from that standpoint. Like it's not funny what's happening, but
oh no, 100%. I know I'll be okay. I'll go make more sales.
It's some of those lessons you learn. You can't learn until you've been through it.
And most people that they would go bankrupt, they'd quit. They'd fucking quit.
Yeah.
So, well, like I said, I'm super appreciative of you, Alex and Nico, because what took you guys years to do is only taking me months, simply because I'm learning from your mistakes.
That's awesome, man. Yeah, and I'm happy to hear that. And there's always a ton of people to learn from. And I think to your point too, you said something interesting about, a lot of people talk shit about coaches. And here's the real reason, because I've been on both sides now and I've been in the industry a lot. There's things I wish I had done different. There's things I'm really proud of, but there's 2 pieces. So the first one to understand is it's very easy to be a coach. So by nature, for doctors, for example, the reason you'll have less issues with most doctors is because to become a doctor, you have to go through 12 years plus a school. So the chances that people fall off is much higher. With business, you can make more, but the irony is it's actually a lower threshold. So
a low barrier of entry.
Right. So tomorrow, my little sister, she could be a coach. So by nature, 80% of the coaches are going to be bad because of the 80-20 rule. So that's number one. And then number 2 is just understanding the size of the business. So you have to remember, some people will make statements and say, hey, like I don't get a lot of chargebacks, or, I don't get bad reviews, or whatever it is. But then you have to go look at, like, go on, betterbusinessbureau.com or .org, whatever it is, and type in ADT, one of the biggest security companies in the world, if not the biggest. They have horrible reviews, on Better Business Bureau, but they're considered a legitimate company, and they probably have, tens of thousands more positive reviews. So there's kind of 2 parts to the coin. Is part of it is just understanding there is a lot of bad coaches and trash out there. On the other hand, is also understanding from like a coaching perspective or service. The reason it's hard is because people come in with different skill sets. And so, I could come to you, Mason, and, hey, Tanner, I want to work in your program. And I could tell you the truth and this and that. But the reality is, if you have these skills, if you went through Nico's program and Hermosi and all these other people, you have a higher chance to succeed than Susie, this is her first time through, or maybe she's shy to talk to people. And so there's that balance where people make it sound easy, but the reality is the reason it's so hard to do coaching is people come in at different points. The reason software is so easy is it's not based on their skill. The software just does what the software.
You have to meet them where they're at, which is what I've gotten really good at. And now I've really been focused on testimonials. I learned that from your website, because you have like 2,000. It's the longest web page I've ever been on.
Yeah, but that's on the hindsight. That's the one thing people don't understand. That's hard, and that's part of why scaling a service-based business past typically 30-ish million a year, you don't hear it very often for that reason, because there's so much discrepancy in the skill level of people that's what makes it hard to scale and keep people happy. Because John comes in and he's a baller, and he's, oh, Tanner's the best ever. And then you get Susie who comes in, who's at the bottom, and she's not great at stuff and she has a bad experience. So you want to try to only sell people who are going to succeed. That's the goal.
Correct. Well,
But
I've
the
gotten a
reality
lot
is
more.
when you have a sales team and you have a staff and all that stuff, it's never going to be perfect. And so anyways, I just wanted to throw that in because now that I've been on both sides of the coin, where I was just a client and now I've been a coach, it's usually in the middle. It's
Bad
almost
apples ruin
always
the
in
tree.
middle.
You got these 18-year-old dating coaches with their two Tinder dates of experience.
Those are funny. Those are funny. But yeah, just like you said, and so I don't ever want to put someone down for trying. I think
Correct.
someone who is trying their best but isn't very good, I respect a lot more than someone who maybe has more skill but they're not even trying. But I just think going in with that open mindset, because for me, I went into coaching thinking every program I took had to help me. And you want it to, but now I go, 80% of the money I've spent on coaching, I would consider a bad investment, but it still helped me because it showed me, hey, don't do this. This is wrong. That's wrong. But people don't view it that way. So if I've spent, $2 million on my personal development to this point, I'd say about, 1.6 million, 1.5 million or so was probably what I would consider a bad investment, but you have to know that's part of the game.
Oh, correct. Like I've only invested $250,000 into like coaches, courses, and masterminds, and it's like 80% of that was just buying mistakes. But it's like
Yeah.
people expect to go through one coaching program and change, like save their life, and
It's
you
like
can
it's a
get lucky,
girlfriend.
but it's highly unlikely.
Yeah, it's a girlfriend. You're gonna date 10, you'll marry one, 9 won't. Maybe you'll never marry any of them, right? But you have to go in with the proper expectation. I think that's what makes life more difficult sometimes is we have this, vision of what we think it should be, and then there's reality. And so the closer that we can just make sure, not saying you don't have big goals, but just make sure, hey, this may or may not be the thing I need. It's easier to move forward and take the good stuff from it and then push away the bad because, for example, you, Mason, now that you've been through coaching programs, the next program you go into, you're going to get better results. And then that coach will say, my program's so good. But the truth is, Mason just did a bunch of work and just spent, $50,000. That's why he got good results to your program, not the program itself. So I think when you have that mindset, the coach, yes, you can say you helped, but it's also being mature enough to know, hey, it's probably not all me either. Because if you're going to take all the good, you also have to be able to take all the bad. So it's kind of in that middle ground where what can I do to make my program better, but also don't believe everything you hear, good and bad.
That's the one reason I shut off my ads after like hearing Hormozy is most people, they'll make one sale, turn on paid ads and keep them on. And you're always just trying, eventually you'll hit that hypothetical max. And it's like,
Mm-hmm.
I've made sales now. Let me make the product so phenomenal that it just grows word of mouth. And that's how it's doing it now.
That's awesome, man. Yeah. And you know what? If you can grow it word of mouth, that's 60% of my expenses every month in my companies. 60% of what we spend on average, not always, but on average, it's about 60% of our expenses is ads. And so if you take that away, that's where you get
Profit,
Logan
more bottom
Paul,
line.
Mr. Beast, Kim Kardashian. That's why those people make so much money because they're not having to pay for people to find out who they are or what they're selling. So if you can do it that way, it's a lot easier to grow. And that's part of why Gym Launch did so well because it was so referral. They had so much word of mouth. That's part of why I did so well.
Well, that's why it's so cool to see you focusing on branding now. So it's just like, okay, I'm doing the right thing. Just have to play the long game. I'll get to where he's at eventually.
Yeah. And I'll say this too, if you can grow your company, it's easier to do branding because now you can pay for it. So, you may not end up like Hormozy, right? Alex is really taken off. I'm really happy for him. Like he's really taken off. I'd probably say we became really good friends right before that. And so he's really taken off. And so for me, it's having that pursuit and trying to get there. You may never get there, but understanding the journey is really what the reward is anyways. And that's hard for some people to see. But now that I've had, a small amount of success, it's easier for me to understand that because when I said my goal is to hit $1 million a month, that was my biggest goal. And I said, hey, if I hit $1 million a month, like I'm a god.
Good.
And I got there and I remember it not feeling anything like I thought it would. It felt good, but I was surprised. I said, man, I just killed myself and it's not that great. And so if you can really fall in love with the journey, like Mason, what you're going through right now, just trying to make your
I,
product.
I love the journey. I do what I need to do, regardless
Yeah.
of how I feel. Like my first 100,000 felt better than my first million.
Yeah.
Now,
And
why?
it's,
I have no clue. But
yeah. And it's just, what makes it worth it is how difficult it is, right? If everything's handed to you, you can't possibly be grateful for the good times. So you need those bad times to be grateful for the good times.
correct. Like if everyone had six-pack abs or a body like ours, it wouldn't even be valuable.
Right.
So you have to earn it, which is why I think you have to go through tons of stress and trauma. But I'd like to know some because you're not in the insurance space. I like if you were to open your own insurance agency, how would you do that? Like if you stepping out of your current business, if you were to open up a brand new insurance like agency, how would you do that?
It's a great question, man. So, full transparency, I don't know the insurance industry that well. What I do like about it is if you do a good job, depending on the insurance you have, right? But people pretty much just keep paying it forever. In fact, I'm probably the best insurance customer you could get because I have one call a year and I make sure it's getting paid, and that's pretty much the extent of what I have. I'm pretty easy, but that's why those businesses are so valuable because you're essentially getting paid depending on the insurance, right? But if nothing's happening, you're basically getting money and then you're able to go invest it and make a large return with other people's money. That's at least how Warren Buffett does it, right? So he's really big on those types
Yeah.
of companies because he's such a good investor that he's taking other people's money. Yes, they have to be careful. If there's some type of catastrophe happens, they have to pay it out. But most of that money they're able to invest. So I don't know. To your question, it would probably be a lot different. You probably would be able to get a lot of customers through like cold calling, cold email. You could do door to door type stuff. I do know it's a very competitive industry. So if it was me and I was paying for insurance, I know speaking from my perspective, the number one thing that I look for is just like who's going to give me the best deal. Because more times than not, it's all about the same. That's at least how I view it. So if I were in your shoes, I would always just be looking like, how can I make it so they can't say no to where they're getting more than the other service? And that could either be, hey, they pay more up front, but it's less over time, or they get these extra features or benefits. But like an example, it's not insurance, but I spoke to this real estate fund the other day, and they on average get about 31% returns. For context, the average fund for real estate does about 18% returns. So right there, that's one of their sticking points is, look, here's our history over the last 20 something years. Here's this person and this person, this person. Plus the head guy has been in hotels and real estate for about 35 years and they show his track record and history. So I think if I were in your shoes, it's what can you show that makes you different? Like, and you're young, but anything that you could show, what's your track history? Like what experience do you have? Are you aligned with anyone, right? So something maybe you could do is align yourself with someone who has been in the industry a long time. And that's part of your selling point. Yeah, by the way, me and our partners, we've been combined doing this X amount of years. And then the other thing is just what do you bring to the table that someone else doesn't? So again, I'll be honest, I don't know the insurance industry that well, but those to me are the two sticking points because it's I guess you could say commoditized service where there's a lot of similarities across the board. And so those would be the two most important things for me is what am I getting that's different? And then, obviously what's the price point? Like I just switched from Verizon to T-Mobile, not because I can't afford it, but Verizon was charging me like $160 and I got the same plan with T-Mobile for $90. It just didn't make sense. I didn't see any difference. And I had T-Mobile in the past and the service was pretty good, but I got upset a couple of times. I went to Verizon, it was worse, but I was paying more. So that was just a couple of examples. I don't know if that answered your question.
No, that does it perfectly because you're not an insurance agent,
Not at
but
all.
you
Not
have
at all.
business knowledge. So, guys, what he's pretty much saying is partner up with the agency that gives you the best value proposition and things for your customer base. A lot of people just buy leads in the space.
Yeah.
They buy leads for people who want to buy insurance. So, guys, if you partner up with a huge brand and you're like underneath the company of Patrick Bet David or something like that, you're going to have a lot more branding exposure, which is more eyeballs and attention. So,
well, and even like Patrick David, again, I don't know him that well, but I think before he broke off, he had a lot of experience. So that's obviously gonna be part of his selling point. It's, hey, I've been in insurance industry for this long. So just you as a young guy, if you don't have that yet, I think aligning yourself with someone who does, and then later down the road, once you have your experience, you don't really have to, hold on to that anymore. But if you're an 18-year-old kid, I think something, or you could say or do to try to elevate yourself is important, because the first question I'm going to ask, well, how long have you been doing it? Like, oh, I just started. That's hard for a lot of people to swallow. So
yeah, it's time for a heart surgery. Which doctor do you want? The one who's done 10,000 or the one who just graduated school? So
right, exactly.
What are some of the biggest mistakes you see with people leading teams? Because you've got quite a bit of infrastructure below you. What are some of the biggest mistakes you see of people leading teams in their business?
Yeah, they just don't know how to lead. So examples of that is typically what I'll see is entrepreneurs in a small business can get to 100,000 a month by themselves, or very few employees, contractors, 2, 3, 4 max. So maybe they'll have one salesperson, like a setter, a coach or two, and that's it. The issue when you start to scale is you can't do it all anymore. And so you have to start holding people accountable. But what people don't understand about management is it never ends. So what most owners do is they'll hire someone, they'll show them something a couple times, and then that's it. Unless it's a very high paid position. So COO, CEO, they're making 15, 20, 30K a month. You got to usually check on them a little bit more. And so a setter, for example, or a coach, there's constant management updates. Hey, did you do this? Let me take a look. Let's review your calls. Let's review your messages. And people just don't want to do that because it's hard. And that's the reality. It's hard. And so I think the biggest mistake is they don't understand how to really build a team. And when you hire someone, you're usually in the beginning, if it's because your first hire is usually not a very skilled person because your business isn't that big. You're paying them, but you're also doing their job. Yep. And I didn't understand that. I was actually really frustrated with my first hire because I'd show them something and they'd mess it up. And I said, man, I already showed them this. Why don't they get it? But you got to understand that the people you're hiring are not you.
Correct.
When you start. And so you have to show them over and over and over and over again, have an SOP, a process they can follow. So just how you have that for your clients, you have to have that for your team. So when you're building a company, it's not just SOPs and structure for your clients, it's SOPs and structure for your team. So you're really building two teams or two businesses at the same time. And most people, they just can't do it. It's hard. And just to get to the point I'm at, I mean, it took me, I could have stepped out a little sooner, but it took me, 3-4 years to really understand how to hire and train people. And most people, they'll just quit before them because it's too hard. And that's why sometimes in my posts, like even today, I was commenting back to someone.
Prescott, I saw that.
Yeah, I was commenting back to someone before I got on about, I think the post was, hey, if someone's doing 1,200 things, you can guarantee that they're average at all of them. And, someone got upset by me saying that because they usually will say something of the effect, well, everyone has their own ambitions and things in life that they want. But my point is always based on business, right? And so my point was, hey, if you're doing a lot of things, if someone has 8 courses they just threw out, they're probably all not that good because you can't possibly be focusing on 8 things at once and be good. And I've seen this with the highest levels of skill and talent. So I just think with CEOs, when they get to 100,000, they think, oh, now I just hire people and that's it and I'm done. But that's when the work begins, because now you have to do your job and you have to check on them. And then eventually, when you get managers, then you just check in with the managers who check on them. But it's a whole process and you got to be making a lot of money to get there. And so that's why most people I see struggle from my experience.
No, and that's why I love getting your course, because I found out the 5 external functions of any business as well as the 5 internal, so I could structure everything, review sales calls, and really replicate myself in the agents that I was training. But it's I wouldn't have learned that without you guys.
Well, I appreciate that. I think to your point, give yourself some more credit too, because I'm in the space now. I had a one-to-one client, and she came in and she was already doing 50,000 a month. Now she's doing 120 something. And she tells me all the time it's us, but she's already doing 50,000 a month, And so I think with your attitude, the way you're speaking right now and how you're talking, you would have gotten there. It's just how fast you would have gotten there.
Exactly. You guys just made it a lot faster.
Yeah. And so I think I think I always take those with a grain of salt now, though, because the people who succeed, they have your type of attitude. The people who don't, they're always looking to blame and stuff like that. And I can almost guarantee, I mean, you haven't said it, but I can almost guarantee there are probably parts in my program and others you've taken where you're like, like that part wasn't that good.
Oh,
Or,
100%. But it's
you
like,
know,
I go into it with the proper expectations. Like, hey, this is not the cure all. This is not the whole degree. It's just one part of the college degree.
right.
Like, it's going to be 40 of them that make
Right.
up the full resume of it.
Exactly. But I think you have the right attitude. And so it's more about that saying, you know, how you react to things versus what happens to you. Because a lot of us go through trials and tribulations and hard stuff, but it's how you react to it. And so I think your mindset's right on par with where it needs to be.
Well, that's why I love neurolinguistic programming, because it's like a light switch for emotions. Like, I get called, I'm not sure if your girlfriend watches Vampire Diaries or anything like that. Someone called me Klaus Michelson one day and is like, you're an unemotional prick. This girl actually tagged me in one of your Instagram posts the other day. Like, I know this dude. Why are you tagging me?
Tanner's the same way as me.
It's like, well, if you don't like me, you might not like him. So
yeah. Well, and I think, you know, I also think some people, they want to be offended. So something I'm trying to do better is I'm also trying to, like, that's something I can work on, is maybe saying things in a way that doesn't offend people as much, or maybe doesn't come off, you know, as douchey or whatever word you want to throw in there. But I'm just like a no BS type person. I think a lot of times people beat around the bush of what they need to know or what they need to hear. And so I don't ever have intent to offend people, but I do try to say what I think people need to hear. And so maybe on my side,
just phrasing it differently.
Yeah, saying it differently. And then I think on their side is just try not to be offended, because I think some people, they look to be offended. So for example, today or yesterday on Facebook, I said, hey, if someone's doing 1,200 things, you can pretty much guarantee that they're average at all of them. And, you know, that was a business context.
Yeah,
right?
no emotions attached to it.
Right. So someone came in and said, hey, well, maybe other people have different values than you and they don't care about being average and it's all about being happy. And like, yeah, of course. But that wasn't the point I was trying to make. So I think on both sides, maybe I could have said it better. But on the other side, I think a lot of people in today's society with social media, they look to be offended. And I think that's a big weakness. I think if you can learn to just like take away what's like what the point of what someone said was or what they tried to say, versus always looking for a chink in the armor, you know, the straw man arguments. So you'll say something that is true 99% of the time, but
and they look for exceptions, but exceptions do not disprove the point.
Yeah. And so, you know, I think just always trying to be in the middle, even kill. I think if you're ever like, you always think you're right, or you always think you're wrong, that's not true. It's probably in the middle. And so that example explicitly, I probably could have said it better. And then I think the person who got upset probably could work on not trying to get as offended, because more times than not, when I say stuff, I'm thinking, I mean, you knew what I meant, right? Like you're trying to make a fuss out of nothing. You knew what I meant.
Society is very weird today with our TikTok attention span. It's like we naturally look for what's wrong. And I think most of the population are probably just NPCs at this point. If the news told them the sky was gray and orange, they would believe that. And the moment you told them it was blue, they'd like ostracize you. Like when I was doing research before joining your program, it's like I saw people making fun of how fast you said your name in an advertisement. It's like Tanner Chidester. And they're like, who's this dude think he is with his muscle? I was like, why are you talking shit? You've got 20 subscribers.
I probably laugh at it too. That's, you know, I just think it's hard more times than not, especially with, you know, ads. People have to try to justify where they're at. And so you have two types of people where either one, they say, hey, if that person did it, I can do it too. And it's almost inspiration. And then you have the other people who look at it as, hey, if I'm not there, he must have gotten lucky because, you know, if it was easy or whatever, I would be there. And you know, I think I've been in both camps, but it's also who you're around. You know, parents have a lot of influence over their kids. And I think a lot more than people give credit for. And so if you're always hearing those types of things where, oh, you know, you weren't born in the right place, or you're not tall enough, or you're not skinny enough, or you're not this or that, those types of things, eventually they become your beliefs, and your beliefs become your actions. And so luckily for me, I was very lucky to have parents who never really said negative things or negative things to me. And they weren't, I want to say they were, yes, Tanner, start your business, you're going to crush it. they were a little worried, but they didn't put me down for it. They just say, hey, look, if that's what you want to do it, but we're not going to pay for anything. So like, it better work.
It turns you into a critical thinker, but it's like, this is
Yeah.
why like you would really enjoy an NLP class, because it teaches you how the brain works. You pick
Sure.
up your truth of the world from 0 to 7 years old. You find your role models from 8 to 13, the Kobe's and the LeBrons. And then from 13 to 21, you're forming your own opinions based on beliefs you got as a kid.
Yeah.
And if they're conflicting, that's when you start running into all this limiting beliefs, depression. Well, my parents told me Santa was real and they lied to me. Can I trust them? Like it's a whole bunch of stuff, but you understand how communication and language really functions. And when you become conscious of it, it's that self-awareness. Like,
Right.
if I say this, I know they are going to feel this way. Let me change it up. And it just makes you take total accountability and ownership of your life. I like that, but it scares most people.
Yeah. And, you know, it's funny, but people have a lot more control than they think they do.
They do, but they give it away. They blame their circumstances instead of taking ownership.
And it's interesting because you would think people would want more control, right? You would want more control over
They
your
want to be
life.
led. They want to be told what to do now.
Yeah, and so I do find that interesting, and I'm very much of that opinion. I try to keep as much control over my life as I can. So if my house burns down randomly, or there's an earthquake or a tornado, those are things you can't control. But a lot of times, there's tons of things we can control.
It's just all state of mind.
100%, 100%. So it's funny you're saying a lot of these things. I had to learn this over time, especially like growing a company, and that's part of also why I love business so much. Is it's the growth, it's the personal growth. People don't see that, so they just hear a number. They'll say, oh well, you just want to build $1 billion company because you're greedy, or whatever. But
the rich people I know are the most generous.
Yeah. So yeah, but it's not even that. It's the growth. That's the selfish part. That's what people don't get. You got to usually make money until you understand that. But once I started making really good money, I realized, I said, because the question gets asked, why do you want to keep going? And you have to really think, because when you start a company or you start a business, you're doing it because you're broke. People will say stuff like, oh, I just want to help people. So, I mean, maybe you do.
I was broke. I was up till 4 a.m. and your ad popped up. I was like, well, I guess it's time to learn this shit. I'm tired of being broke.
Right.
Like, this is the reason why whatever.
Yeah. So
I was making good money selling insurance, but I was still broke to my own definition.
Yeah. So I don't think most people actually mean that. I think they're in a bad situation. They want to get out of it. And then once you're out of it, right, and then Maslow's hierarchy, you start taking care of some of those basic needs. You got to really sit and think, well, why do I want to grow? And yes, you want to help people, but I think the selfish thing is that you want the personal growth. You want to see how far you can go, because to build $1 million company and then a 10 million and 100 million and so on and so forth, you have to become a different person. You have to learn new skills. And that's what I found out is what I actually enjoy. And that's why I like to keep going. And that's why I'm going to keep going, because otherwise, you start realizing you're kind of this insignificant speck. There was a point in time where we were
in the grand scheme of things. Yeah.
Because I was doing $1 million a month. And so, $1 million a month, we're still getting 80, 90 high ticket clients a month. We're getting a lot of recurring revenue. And then I started, I was looking out my window. I had this awesome view in Miami. And I remember looking out the window. I said, man, I'm nowhere near Jeff Bezos or Elon Musk or Mark Zuckerberg. And even them in the grand scheme isn't going to mean much. So where does that leave me? And so that's where I had to start sitting with those thoughts, because no matter how big or bad you think you get, you still really are an insignificant speck in the grand scheme of the galaxy or the world, right?
Yes.
And it's kind of scary, but it's also humbling at the same time. And it puts things in perspective.
Well, see, like I like to believe I live in two realities. So you have the real world, then you have my own interpretation of it. And it's like, as long as I conquer my own world, I don't really give a shit what happens out there.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like, I'm going to make a shit ton of money, help a lot of people, and have a lot of sons and conquer the world. I'm going to be the Achilles of my own world. That's all that matters.
Yeah.
How do I do that? By helping a lot of people.
Yeah. And you're right about that. And that's what it's about. Because eventually you do realize that most, at least in my opinion, I feel most of the stuff we do doesn't matter too much. Like the job you have, like, for example, if you didn't want to start a business and XYZ and you just had, a regular job or whatever it was, I don't think anyone would argue that's that big of a deal. Just, yeah, it's cool. It's whatever he wants to do. So I think the only things that have value are the things we place value on.
Correct. You have to
Right.
define your own meanings and labels and
Yeah. So what's what's valuable to you, right?
That's the whole point of branding. You find people who love your brand, who love your message.
Mhm.
And it's like Grant Cardone, you either love him or you hate him. Trump, you either love him or you hate him, but you know him.
Yeah. And most people you meet in person are a lot better than how you see them online. So for example, like I've met Grant in person, had a great experience with him.
I like him.
You said what?
I like him.
Yeah, no, I liked him a lot. I had great experience with him. Nothing bad to say about him. He was super encouraging and positive. And I just think people, they get a snapshot on social media and they make judgments on people. But if they ever met them in person, they have a different perspective. I've met people who said, "Man, you're a lot better in person than I thought you'd be." And I'm like, "Thanks."
They'll take a 60-second snapshot of your life and think that's you. It's all a matter of perception. Like, I think perspicacity is the most important thing in any business, just how you view what you do.
Yep. Yeah.
If you think you're hurting people, you're hurting them. If you think you're helping them, you're helping them.
Yeah. And I think we all know at the end of the day, if we're doing our best, we're trying to help people and so on and so forth. And again, it goes back to what I said, like, don't get too high, don't get too low. If people are telling you all the time you're amazing, don't believe all of it. And if people are telling you you're bad all the time, don't believe all of it. You need just staying in the middle is usually the best place to be, because if you start believing too much, whether it's good or bad, it can just bring you to a place where it's not reality, right? And then you start kind of believing like,
correct,
which is why, like a big head and stuff like that.
I'm ruthless with the company and the thoughts that I tolerate in my life. Like, the nice comments are nice, the bad comments are bad. Like, I had my first video go viral the other day on TikTok, sitting at like 60,000 views, but people were tagging Bradley and all these salespeople saying, "Look at how fucking horrible this dude is." I got messages telling me to go kill myself. I was like, this is a sales video. What the fuck is wrong with you?
Yeah.
It's like, no one knows me better than I know me. And it's like, support or hate, I ignore it.
It's just part of it though too. And I think if you ever like feel bad, like you just go go look at someone who's big, like really big on social, like
look at their comments.
Just look at their comments, and they get the same stuff times probably 100. And so I just think it's human nature. People say stuff behind a computer or a phone they would never, ever, ever say to your face. And so when you start, I think that also helps me, because I just kind of think it's funny and I laugh it off, because I've never had someone come up to me, at least in person, and say something negative. It's always been a very positive experience. So maybe it'll happen someday, but
look at your physique, dude, because us as men, like, I step into my biological duties. I want to conquer. This is why we used to melt shit down, march in a single way, and just fight whoever we came in front of and took all their gold.
Yeah.
Like, that's what us men used to do. Kings at the end of every war would end up dying with their heads cut off. But it's like, I'm going to step into my duties as a man. But it's like, how tall are you? Like 6 foot?
6'2".
Yeah. So you got 2 inches on me, but like some dude that comes up to us in public who hides behind a username of "I like sales 22 unicorns."
TikTok's pretty bad. It's probably like user 7823BC.
That's what I'm saying. They have like rainbow hair. They identify as a unicorn. Like, if they see us in public, they're not gonna say shit.
Yeah, usually not. I just think it's just easier behind a computer.
100%. But you're also a big dude. Like, you've got a big physique.
Yeah, it's relative. I mean, I'll see some guys who
are they're jacked
300, but yeah, no, I hear it, but I think you have the right mindset, just not getting worked up over it. There's usually no point, and people who do that, they're usually in a bad spot. I've never had
doing the best with what they have. I understand behind every behavior is a positive intention for the most part, unless you're Jeffrey Dahmer, then
yeah, that probably is accurate.
That's about it. So what are some of the biggest mistakes you've personally made in your business? Like 50 million in revenue, that's more than you're in top 1% for sure. So
I think the biggest thing probably was just not hiring better people sooner. So
A players.
Yeah. So here's something I see a lot right now, and I don't want to say it's alarming because it's their life, But I'll see people who tell me, well, I got 70% margin, I got 80% margin, just these crazy numbers. I'm like, man, how do you have that high of a margin?
Keeping all the profits.
Right. But then when I find out is they're hiring, usually they're hiring, and this isn't always bad, but they're hiring, super cheap international, which isn't always bad, but stick with me. Their whole team is like that. And then they're still heavily involved in the company. And so, yes, to a point, you should be involved. But eventually, if you're working 16, 18-hour days and you're, the keystone of the company and everyone on your team is just the bare minimum pay, and you don't have a lot of proactive thinkers or people who can come up with solutions on their own, you'll never really be out of the business. And I don't know if burnout is the right word, because I think, hey, if I had to keep working in my business, could I do it? I could, but it's nice to know that I can step away and not do anything now, and the business will still run and function at a high level. And there's a lot of people I see who can't do that. So I think the mistake, that was your question, was I just didn't hire high quality people sooner, and I should have. Meaning, instead of paying $4,000, I should have hired someone who had experience and pay $7,000 or $8,000. Or, instead of paying $10,000, pay $15,000. Just finding people who have actual experience and then also embody the company values you want. So for me, what I want when someone works for me is I want competitive greatness and proactivity. Those are the top two. So meaning, do you work your best at all times? Do you try your best? Right? Because you don't have to actually be perfect. I just want to know that, are you doing your best work?
Progressing.
And then, are you proactive? So instead of coming to me and saying, hey, Tanner, what should I do? You go, Tanner, here's a problem. I already came up with a solution. Don't even worry about it.
Critical thinking and emotional intelligence.
Correct.
Those are like the underlying traits of what you just said. Because
so
regardless of how you feel, business does not care if you're depressed or happy.
Correct. And something that people will get upset about, but I will say stuff like, hey, I won't hire anyone who asks about paid days off on the first interview. And I'll get people just blowing me up.
I love that.
Right. And they'll say, well, that's not right because this and that, maybe that's what's valuable to them. But you have to think, going back to what you said, the business needs what the business needs. And so I want someone who actually enjoys their work and wants to work long hours, not because they have to, but because that's what's best for the business and what I resonate with. And so if you are patient enough, you can find someone. The best person to hire is you take culture over experience. So if you have to choose and it's like really experienced, but they don't fit your culture, take the culture. But the best workers I have is they fit our culture perfectly and they have experience. And those people, they can take your company to the moon. They're going to cost more, but it's worth what you're paying in the long run. Because otherwise
they've already won the gold medal somewhere else doing the exact same thing. So just pay them to come run the race over here.
Yeah, 100%. And so I just would have done that sooner. And that's a big mistake I see most people make, is they're just so obsessed with their margins that they just won't change how they hire and how they do things. And I think that's to their detriment. So,
well, that's really all I was trying to stack up cash for, because my profit margins are stupid. Probably looking at 80 something percent, 85. Yeah. But it's like I was just saving up to get like a world-class marketer.
Because what you're probably looking for, and it depends. I mean, it just depends, but really what you're looking for is like a COO, like a COO, CMO. So Chief Marketing Officer, Chief Operational Officer, like that. That was like one of my best hires. And he runs my whole company and he runs our marketing. He's just a super smart guy. That's
someone I was looking for, because I'm not the best at marketing. Like sales is my thing. Mindset is my thing. I can operate, I can be productive, but it's like the marketing. I'd rather find someone who's 10 times better than me and pay them what they're worth. And it's like account frozen. It's like, shit, I got to do more.
Yeah. Yeah. But you have the right mindset, but that's what I would have changed. I just would have hired better. And I think to get to the highest levels, you have to be good at team building. It's all about your team. It has nothing to do with you, because only one person can do so much in a day. You have to start building a team that can do cumulative effort.
No, I like how you touched on the culture part, because if someone's just there to make money and you do something they don't like they're gone.
Yep.
They set a bad example of what you'll tolerate for the rest of the team. They know we can show up late and take days off. They know we can be late to meetings.
Right. And people do what you allow. And so, if you say something and then you don't follow through with it, people do what you allow. And I think that's the other thing, is there's that I don't know if you've read the book, but it's Dichotomy of Leadership.
Yeah,
right?
it's just pattern recognition. Your team will do what you do, not what you tell them to do. If you
Yeah.
tell them to be on time and you're 5 minutes late, you best believe they're stopping for that
Yeah.
$5 cup of Starbucks.
Yeah, and so there's a balance, right, of being someone's friend and being their boss. And so that's what makes it so difficult because if you're too hard, people leave. If you're too nice, stuff doesn't get done. They're not serious. And so that book explains it perfectly where you have to be severe enough where they take you seriously and they understand it's serious, but they also like you and want to work for you. Because if those two things are in alignment, it's tough. So that's the other thing I would say is a huge mistake that I've seen is people are not good at handling people or managing people. And so they leave and they're never able to build these great teams because they don't know how to handle people. And so that is a skill. I
Do you
mean, it
think a
really
lot
is
of do you
a skill.
think a lot of that is just cognitive dissonance? They'll look over things like even though you don't meet the role, like you can't fulfill the expectations. I just love the way your beard is, or I love how you curl your hair, Susie. I'm gonna let you come on anyways. And
Yeah, they just don't know what they're looking for. They just are trying to find relief. And so what happens a lot of times is they'll hire the first person who comes through because they're just so tired of doing the job. They don't have SOPs in place. The person isn't a right culture fit. They're not managing them properly, and that's the problem. Because when you hire someone, you're actually paying them and doing their job in the beginning, unless they're super experienced. But when I hired setters and sales guys, I had to train them for 2 months. I
but
mean,
just like
didn't,
customers,
yeah,
customers
I
are
didn't
the
just
least profitable right when they buy. They usually get the
right,
ROI on the back end. Same
right.
thing with your employees.
Right. So that was just something I had to get used to. But that was a skill I've learned, but a lot of people don't learn that skill, and that's why they can't scale. Because if you can't learn how to build a team that can do things without just constant micromanaging, there's only so many hours of the day. You just can't work more than 24 hours in a day. You just can't. That's your max.
No, 100%. So what has been the biggest thing that you're like proud of for yourself, or like what do you think the most important thing you've done in your business is?
I would say, I mean, the two things I'm the most proud of, obviously the people who I've genuinely helped them financially better their life. I feel I really like that because I was also a fitness coach, but when you help someone make more money, they can use that money on whatever they want. And so to help someone get out of the situation I was in financially and show them the things that worked for me and help, that's a huge reward. I think the other thing besides that though is just the people I've been able to give jobs. I mean, my both my brothers.
Yeah, I saw that. One always messages me about my beard. They're like, "Well, if they don't love you now, they won't it. Like they
Yeah,
don't deserve
maybe
it."
Benson, who
Yeah,
knows?
it's Vincent. He's cool,
Benson,
man. I've talked to him quite a
yeah,
bit.
that's awesome. So like Benson and Gentry, they've both been able to work with me, and we get to spend a lot of time together and grow the company, and I get to pay them way more money than they ever would have made, um, going to school. And so that's probably the second thing I'm the most proud of is just the fact that I've been able to bless my family, and bless the people who work with me because I have about 100 people on staff. That's 100 people that would have jobs
Lives have
somewhere else.
changed. Yeah, they
Yeah,
I
or
know
they'd have
they're
to
in
work
good
somewhere else. And so I
positions.
think when you create a business that is really relevant and does well, you're creating jobs. And that blesses other people's life to have a paycheck that they know is going to come through, versus another business or another company that maybe they don't treat them as well, or they're not that great of a company. So they don't know if they're going to be around in the next couple of years. So that's been a big blessing.
Well, dude, like what I think is cool is the word of mouth aspect about your business. Like I said, it is by far the longest landing page I have ever seen in my life. But it's just
Me too, man.
testimonials. Like you can't ignore it. It's someone in every walk of life,
Yeah.
but it's you can't ignore that. The
Yeah.
proof is in the
Well, and
pudding.
it's just time and consistency. It's time and consistency. Like we do a good job of trying to make sure that we ask for testimonials when they've had wins or we have a good process. But we've also been in the game 5 years, so it's like what they say: if you stick with something long enough, it's hard to fail because you just get so good at it. You just know how to do it. So we could always improve, but I like to think over the last 5 years we've learned a lot, and I think the next 5 years it's going to be the same thing. We'll just keep getting better.
Absolute takeover. Well, dude, I'll be respectful of your time. Tanner, I really appreciate you coming on here, man. Seriously, I appreciate your ELA course. It helped me out a lot building my first business. I know a lot of first businesses don't make it
Yeah.
simply because they waste their profits on a Lamborghini. But
I
it's
bought
like,
I bought one of those and I was fun, man, but 6 months is that's how long it takes for stuff to get old. So I was glad to get out of my system, but it was needed. It was needed, but then I got out of my system and I'm over
I'm
it.
just not a car dude. I like my truck. I like people getting out of my way when traffic comes. You're not going to stand in the way of his big ass F-150. Like, you'll get off the road.
Yeah. Yes.
But it's like, dude, I really appreciate you coming on here, man. This was good. I think it's going to help a lot of people. So where can they find you at if they want to come join the program, which I will vouch for?
Thanks, man.
Like,
Appreciate it.
Proof is it doesn't lie.
I appreciate it, man. Well, YouTube's a great place to find me now. I'm really trying to put more high quality content out there. That's like a huge focus for me this year. And then, if they do need help with their business, elitecos.com. I'm not involved in the day-to-day, but I still advise, and Benson actually is running operations now. So yeah, those two places would be great.
All right. And isn't your website eliteceos.com?
That's it, man. Just elite and then CEOS.com.
Well, you guys go check out the 13 million testimonials on that long ass website. And guys, this is an awesome program. I will say that. Come in there with the right expectation that it's just there to help you. It's a stepping stone. You'll get some great skills, but gives you great credible things to do as far as running ads and how to set your pricing right if you are your own business. As far as scaling teams and all that stuff is concerned, I think it'd help a lot of insurance agents. But yeah, Tanner, I appreciate you having you on here, man.
Of course. Thanks for having me, man. I really appreciate your time.
Hey, no problem. I'll send you a copy of this, but play this outro. You can go ahead and head out.
All right, brother. Appreciate you.